So let's start with something fun. I heard you were at the game last night, France versus Brazil. I guess they call them practice runs for the World Cup or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us, what was it like? What was the deal?
It was great. I mean, look, the World Cup is a big deal. I love the World Cup because it really does bring people together from around the world. And we're really fortunate in Massachusetts. We're going to have 7 World Cup games, including the quarterfinal, right here. And I think it's going to be wonderful for a bunch of reasons. It's a chance for Massachusetts to show itself off, literally to the world, because we're going to have so many people coming in from all over. We've got teams that we've got a great fan base here for. I mean, yesterday was unbelievable, the Brazil-France match. The Brazilian crowd was immense. And, of course, I think Massachusetts is home to the largest Brazilian population in the country. It's going to be an economic boom for us. And I think it's going to be great. So really, it was a really positive, wonderful experience. A lot of young kids in the audience yesterday afternoon cheering in their jerseys and the spirit. The Celtics popped by, which was really great. They were there for the event, and I got to go on the field with Jason Tatum for the coin toss. I met Mbappe. You know who Mbappe is?
Oh, he's the star.
Nope.
I mean,
Yeah,
he's
he was the
planet.
on the French team. And French team's actually home base is going to be at Bentley University during the duration.
How many hours did it take you to get there?
It didn't take hours. Actually, I got there in under an hour. Yesterday was an important run, too, because we have spent the last several months, better part of 2 years, with security planning, operational planning, transportation planning. We had trains running, extra trains running down, $30 round-trip tickets for people, so a lot of people went that way. But it was a very successful first run of that, and I'm grateful to all the people who did the work to make that happen.
Great. Our number is 877-301-8970. Before we get to your calls, you've been talking almost nonstop about energy issues and costs, and obviously the ratepayers care a lot about it. I'm unclear about one thing, when you can tell us where we stand. On a television show, I think it was on Channel 5 earlier this month, I think it was, the Speaker of the House says there'll be no significant help next year for ratepayers. And about a minute and a half later, and I'm exaggerating a bit, but not by much, he says there'll be significant immediate savings. Which is it?
There will be savings. I filed an energy bill that I'd like to see get to my desk as soon as possible, because it will do things that will lower our energy costs, and that's super, super important. Just this week, I'm proud to celebrate with A.G. Campbell. This was a case that I filed at FERC years ago. We got a ruling back that says it's going to save ratepayers in Massachusetts hundreds of millions of dollars. It's a $1 billion ruling. Every day, I'm focused on how do I drive down housing costs, healthcare costs, and energy costs. And I announced an executive order 2 weeks ago, and I'm proud of the team for the work on this. That basically says, Massachusetts, we're all of the above, and we are going to work to deploy as much solar, battery storage, wind, hydro, demand response as quickly as we can to lower the cost of energy. We flipped the switch on hydro, remember a couple weeks ago? That's 20% of the electricity supply coming into Massachusetts. Right now, Vineyard Wind is complete, even though the Trump administration tried to stop it, and that is right now powering 400,000 homes off the coast of Massachusetts, from the coast of Massachusetts. And, we just got to continue to push away at that. But the bill I filed, here's how little things that will save people money. The bill forces utilities to go out on the market and buy energy at the cheapest rate. Right now, they're not required to do that. And they're locked into certain times when they can purchase energy. So it's almost like it doesn't matter what the cost of that energy is. They just pass it on to us, and it shows up in our bills. So there's things in that legislation that will automatically save people money. And then there's other things that we are going to be doing over time. I'm working really closely with other states. As you know, I've been working with the Canadian provinces. And I've had conversations with the White House, too, about how we get more energy into the Northeast. This isn't just a Massachusetts problem. It's a regional problem. But it's also, let's face it, okay, we need to be energy independent. You know how Massachusetts is going to be energy independent? It's through hydro, it's through nuclear, it's through fusion, it's through solar, it's through battery storage, all of these things which we're pushing on and trying to do. Right now, I don't know, what is gas this morning? Is it up over $4 here in some places? I know it was $3.90 in a lot of places the other day. Gas has gone up $1 in just the last 4 weeks. As a result of Trump's war of choice in the Middle East, and I don't know when that's going to end anytime soon. So we're going to continue to see higher prices at the pump, higher prices for energy, oil, and to me it just underscores why we need to continue to move here in Massachusetts on the things that we're trying to do to lower costs.
One last thing, Governor, related, and then we will get to the calls at 877-301-8097. As of today, AAA says 3.978, meaning it's essentially a $4 a gallon gas thing. You mentioned affordability. You've been mentioning your whole campaign was about affordability. It was affordability on election night, et cetera. Pioneer Institute says this: Massachusetts consistently ranks among the top 5 states for domestic out-migration, losing roughly 182,000 residents between April of 2020. Obviously, you weren't here then, well, as governor, and July of 2025. That is all about affordability. So what does that say? I assume it's all about affordability. What does it say?
I think it's about affordability. I think it's about affordability, though. Well, it's more than about affordability, okay? I mean, there's a trend that's happened in the last several years across the country. States like California, New York, Massachusetts, other places have seen some outmigration, and some of it has to do with the cost of living. And that's why every day I'm focused on how do we drive down costs. As I said, I'm looking to build more homes. I brought 100,000 homes online, built, permitted, or under development because of the work we've done over the last 3 years. We need to continue to do that to lower rents, to lower housing costs. I capped deductibles and copays. I got rid of prior authorizations, working with insurance companies to ease people's access to health care. We've got to lower health care costs. And we just talked about energy. So, some of it has to do with just the cost of living, okay? Some of it has to do with people retiring and deciding to move to Florida or other places. But I'll tell you what, my money's on Massachusetts. There's a reason that J.P. Morgan just opened up a new office here, that Procter & Gamble Gillette just opened a new headquarters here, that GE Aerospace is expanding here, that Whoop, just next door, another 600 jobs they just announced. Massachusetts offers so much. There's no better place in the country for education, for the highest quality schools, for the best health care, for a quality of life. We were just ranked the best state for outdoor recreation. We've been ranked the best state to have a baby in. We respect people's rights and freedoms at a time when the Trump administration is continuing to take those away. And so there's a lot of reasons people have come historically from all over the world to study here, to research here, to grow businesses here. The federal government's immigration policies don't help. In a state there where we have so many colleges and universities where students come from all over the world, we know the federal government's policy has had an effect in driving people away. But long term, I look at the value proposition of Massachusetts. I talk to a lot of CEOs, and this place is a great value proposition. We just have to make it more affordable. We have to make it more affordable for working families and for middle class families. And that's what the team and I are focused on doing every day.
Just one last thing about housing, just so we get to the calls, and we will in a second, but you read headline after headline that we're way behind where we need to be. There's a ballot question now that would request that you be able to build a single-family house on less than 5,000 square feet. I think that's 1/8 of an acre, something like that, because people are frustrated about the housing thing. A lot of the towns are fighting the efforts to do the housing, the rezoning around T-stops to get things going. And, we're way behind in a lot of permits, so we're not coming down yet in housing costs.
I don't think we've seen a leveling off, but no, we're not coming down. It's still a supply issue. I mean, when I began as governor 3.5 years ago, the housing, we were estimated to be short about 220,000 homes in Massachusetts. The experts said we needed to build 220,000 homes by 2035 to get to a point where we had the supply to bring numbers down. And I got to work. Right after I cut taxes, the first thing I did was file that housing bill that did things like make ADUs something you could do by right. We offered surplus state land up to developers for housing. We did tax credits for developers to incent development of market rate and affordable housing. We've done a number of things, including reducing permitting times. You talked permitting times. Okay, at the state level for housing developments, I shrunk permitting times from over a year down to 30 days. And that's why I'm able to say today to you that over the last 3.5 years, we've got 100,000 homes in the pipeline. Is it enough? No. I need every community in the state to understand that housing is fundamental to the vibrancy of our neighborhoods, our communities, our state. We need housing. You know, I meet so many people who have young people who are living back home with them. And I know they love their kids, but, you know, they want them out in the world and be able to afford a house. I get rid of broker's fees for renters, right? Because I'm looking for every which way to save people money. I've got a first-time home buyer program for middle-income folks. It's $25,000 towards a down payment and lower financing. You know, I'm trying to find every which way to build. And you know, we've got to work to continue to do that. And that's why, you know, I've spoken out about rent control. And I want to be really clear, as somebody who is trying her damnedest every single day to build housing, the rent control ballot petition that's out there has stopped housing production. And it's a shame when I've got, you know, 100 units here, 100 units here, 1,000 units here, where investors were ready to finance the development. They've pulled out of Massachusetts, and we can't have that. We can't have Massachusetts. It was described on a capital markets call with those investors as redlining in Massachusetts. They're not going to, because they're afraid about what rent control is going to do. And we've just got to continue to build housing here in Massachusetts. It's really, really important.
Okay, we're going to the calls. I made a mistake when I talked about gas prices. The national number is just under $4. Massachusetts is just under $3.80. Henry, you're in the Berkshires.
Today, but it was $3.90. I mean, this is the whole thing with the chaos of what Trump has done. You know, you see what the market's doing. I mean, there's no certainty here. There doesn't seem to be an exit strategy here or a plan. And every day, we're just subject to the volatility and the whims of the market. And we haven't even really talked about what's happening with the supply chain and how that's going to play out. Even experts say if this stops tomorrow, we're going to be living with the reverberations of that as an economy, Massachusetts, America, as an economy for months and months to come because of what they've done. And, you know, to say nothing of the money that's being spent, $1 billion a day. You know, at a time when Trump took $1 trillion and congressional Republicans took $1 trillion out of health care this summer, they're spending $1 billion a day on this war. A war that puts our young men and women at risk and in harm's way. And I'm not saying that Iran wasn't the worst regime ever. It's horrible, okay? But what is the thought and what is the plan? And the consequence and the ramifications are real, not just in terms of human life, but also what's going to happen in the American economy. And you know, this is incredibly frustrating is a mild word for it. I mean, look at the poor TSA workers. Look at what's going on in airports around this country. You know, we've got people who aren't being paid. Meanwhile, the people who are being paid are ICE agents standing around, you know, walking through airports, drinking coffee, and just talking to one another, looking at their phones. It's just wrong, folks. It's wrong what's happening right now in our country and the way that Donald Trump and the federal government is not leading and failing the American people. It's wrong, and it doesn't have to be this way.
Henry in the Berkshires, you're on with the governor. Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yes.
All the way from the Berkshires.
Okay.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Okay,
Go
so
ahead.
respectfully, Governor, you're not running against Trump. You're running for governor. And I want to ask you a question about Medicare for all. I'm a physician in the Berkshires.
Where do you practice?
And I know that I'm retired, but I do volunteer work at CHP in Pittsfield.
Great.
But let's finish this thought. I know that Medicare for all will save Massachusetts residents billions of dollars. The studies have been done. And I know that it will improve health care for many people because insurance plans usually do not cover the out-of-pocket expenses adequately. So knowing that, when I spoke to you when you visited the Berkshires as a candidate, you said you were for Medicare for all. So my question is, what have you done to further Medicare for all at the state level, which is feasible? And if you haven't done anything, why not?
Well, Henry, you know, I actually disagree with you. As governor, I have to stand up to Trump. I just said that Trump took $1 trillion out of health care. That puts our community hospitals and our rural hospitals in Massachusetts at risk. Already, look at what we had to do a couple months ago. Trump's letting those subsidies on the ACA expire. 300,000 households in Massachusetts were going to lose their health care coverage because their premiums were going to go through the roof. And I came forward and I found money to help them cover that, and those people maintain their health care coverage right now. As governor, I have to act in the now. I have to think about what can I do today to save people money. And that's why I took the steps on copays and deductibles, got rid of prior authorizations for a lot of things, and why I've formed this a working group right now. I've brought together employers, insurers, and providers, and I've said, healthcare in America is broke. We cannot wait for DC to fix it. I want a plan right now. Later in April, we're going to celebrate 20 years of the ACA and 20 years of universal health care, I should say, pioneered out of Massachusetts. And I want to do that as a reminder of what Massachusetts is capable of. And, you know, we may have our issues with the ACA. It may not be the most perfect thing, but my point is we need Massachusetts innovation on health care right now. And I'll tell you that the federal administration has made it very, very difficult to do that. So I'm going to continue to work on increasing people's access to care, lowering their costs, and working as a state as best we can, given that I don't see anything happening out of D.C. that's going to help us.
Henry, thank you for your call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970 to contact the governor by text or email. Or phone.
John in Bolton, thank you for calling.
Hello, John.
Hi, first time caller, long time listener.
Thank you.
This is sticking with me, John. Just one second on the Henry conversation. You know, Medicaid for all. Again, it's what is the now, and what is practical, and what can you realize right now in this moment. Medicaid for all might be the solution. It might be the way to go. But at the end of the day, we've got to deal right now with how do we cover people, how do we get people care, how do we lower costs. So, you know, my position on that hasn't changed.
Back to John in Bolton. Hi, John.
Hey, John.
Hi, Governor Healey. My children participate in collegiate rowing on the Connecticut River. In 2024, Connecticut Public Radio reported that 3 Massachusetts cities, Holyoke, Chicopee, and Springfield, discharged 2.8 billion gallons of untreated sewage and rainwater into the river. And I just wanted to know what your administration is doing to clean up this type of pollution.
Yeah, well, I filed a bill. It's called the Mass Ready Act, and I hope it gets to my desk soon. What it would do is provide funding to shore up the infrastructure that we need, whether it's funding to help cities and towns whose budgets are strapped deal with things like combined sewer overflows. You know, when it rains a lot and these things overflow and then they end up, you know, getting discharged into our rivers. You know, that's one thing, but shoring up the infrastructure that will mitigate and reduce this kind of pollution. And so that's one thing that I've done. I've also got other programs that we fund through our Department of Energy and Environmental Affairs, working directly with cities and towns to help them meet what they need to do to reduce this kind of pollution. But, you know, it's certainly something we don't want to see happen. A lot of the infrastructure in Massachusetts is, I mean, it's old. It's been around. You mentioned a few cities. They've been around a long time. And so over time, you know, there haven't been maybe all the investments that needed to be made in shoring up some of this old infrastructure. And it's a real problem and one that I take seriously. It's also one where we need federal help and federal assistance because the scope of some of these projects are just massive and require, you know, additional federal funding as well.
John, thanks. You know, you just mentioned this Mass Ready Act. We talked about energy a minute ago where I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it took a year for the House to finally deal with your measure. It's pending Senate approval. We're going to ask you in a minute about the PROTECT Act, trying to insulate us from the worst of ice. This is yet another even year where the legislature goes on a 5-month recess. Starting August 1st. Is this not a time when they should decide to stay in session and actually do their jobs so that the priorities of you and the people of Massachusetts should be addressed rather than having them on vacation for half a year?
Well, I'm working every day with the legislature to try to move things forward. I've got, you know, there's legislation that I've filed that's pending. I know that it is moving and I want it on my desk soon. The DRIVE Act to invest in science and research where the Trump administration has defunded our science and research at our colleges and universities, our teaching hospitals and elsewhere. I want to come forward with funding to shore that up so that UMass Chan Medical School can continue to employ and keep graduate students and doctoral students who are discovering cures and treatments that save the world. The BRIGHT Act that I've filed, this is about money that's going to create a lot of jobs by doing more construction on our public, excuse me.
Do you have water over there?
You got me water.
We
That's
do,
great.
okay.
On our college campuses, right? So that we can build out the kinds of modern labs and spaces that continue to attract students to Massachusetts and meet the needs that we have for training a workforce. That's a jobs bill, huge jobs bill. We talked about the energy bill. There are items that are pending now, and I'm going to continue to work closely with the legislature on that.
But shouldn't they
hope
stay?
they get to my desk.
If they're not done with your priorities,
let's-
shouldn't they stick around?
Well, my hope is that everything gets done
And
before
if
the
it doesn't?
deadline, and that we're on to celebrating Mass 250 on the 4th over nearby the Esplanade, and we've got a few months here to go, and I know people are working hard on these things, but we need action. People need action. And particularly right now in this moment where folks are, there are things that we can do to make life easier, make life more affordable, do what we need to do to protect Massachusetts residents and protect our economy.
Jim mentioned the PROTECT Act and ICE stuff. New Jersey just signed legislation to prohibit law enforcement officers from wearing masks. Washington State has done something similar. 17 other states have done something similar. Shouldn't we be doing that in Massachusetts so they don't have to wear masks?
Well, what I did
Or they don't get to wear masks, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been really aggressive about ICE. I've got legislation that's pending right now. I have issued an executive order that bans ICE from state properties and from using any state resources. I've also filed legislation that keeps ICE out of daycares, hospitals, schools, churches,
They have been
courthouses.
They've been in courtyards.
Yeah.
You probably read courthouses. You probably read
Well,
that.
you know what? I come to this to remember as somebody who prosecuted bad guys,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this is the thing. ICE has done nothing to make us safer. ICE is actually a public safety threat in this country right now. And, that's why I took the action that I did. It's terrible what's happened with this agency and how I don't even refer to it as a law enforcement agency anymore. I really don't know what it is. It is not that, because the way they conduct themselves doesn't comport with law enforcement training. You talk about courthouses, what's happened is restraining order applications have gone down. People are afraid to actually go to court and get a restraining order against an abuser or to report a crime. We've had criminal defendants, charged with serious charges, who've had their cases just dismissed because victims and witnesses are afraid to go to court because of ICE. So we've got to be strong here. We've got to be resolute. The PROTECT Act is moving its way through. But I think Massachusetts has made itself and its voice clear, and I'm sure you're going to hear a lot tomorrow as we move into No Kings. This is part of what is bringing people out. There are things that are just not right. It doesn't matter what party you're in. There are things that are right, there are things that are wrong, there's truth, there's lies, there's a constitution, and there's, authoritarianism. And, I think that's why you're going to see the largest ever rally tomorrow across the country of people speaking out, and people need to continue to speak out against these abuses.
So should we get rid of should we file legislation to get rid of the masks?
I don't know what's in there for
Jim,
amendments. But we'll see. I'll look at anything that comes to my desk. I'm more focused on, the abuse and the presence of ICE in places that they shouldn't be. We cannot have it continue where parents are afraid to send their kids to school. People are afraid to go to work. People are not going to the doctors to get medical treatment because they're afraid of ICE.
Jim McGovern, the congressman, wants to defund them. Do you think that's what we should do?
We should be funding TSA agents right now. I can tell you that. They're going to have to debate all that. I mean, that they certainly need a whole new way of doing things. I mean, I think ICE is funded more than all other federal law enforcement agencies combined.
Yeah.
Like all federal law enforcement agencies combined, and ICE is still funded more. And I think that is entirely out of proportion and wrong, and it shouldn't be that way. And that's This is what I mean. I mean, we've got to have Congress act and put in the guardrails and restore order to this situation.
Diane from
Diane-
Groton, you're on with the governor. Thank
Hi,
you for
Diane.
calling.
How are you?
Hi, thank you so much, Governor, for being with us. I wanted to thank you, first of all, for your strong support of our local Stewart hospital after that was abruptly closed. With your help, we now have an emergency center that's being built and will open in 2027. That is a huge relief for us, and we are really grateful. I am calling today about the very dire fiscal circumstances that over 270 K-12 school districts are facing. We're all considered minimum aid districts, and most of us have a prolonged history of being grossly underfunded by the state, Chapter 70 funding. We've actually formed a coalition of these districts across the state. You may have heard of it, called Project 211 Plus. In our district of Groton-Dunstable, we've lost 15% of all of our district employees. That's more than 30 teachers and staff in just 3 years. And we expect to have another layoff of 7 to 11 this spring. And because we've failed in our last 2 override attempts, there won't be an override on the budget.
Hey, Diane,
there's
if I
no
may,
quick
'cause
one-time fix.
Can you just ask?
There is a question.
What is the question? Thank you.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Last year, you approved a budget that increased the state contribution to $150 per student, but this year it got rolled back to $75 a student. And what we actually need to put a dent in our $1.3 million deficit in Groton is $500 per student. And can you explain the rollback, and will you commit to significantly increasing this number as we're fighting for equitable funding for our district and 86% of all the districts across the Commonwealth?
Well, Diane raises a really important issue, and that is the funding of public education. I mean, the cost of everything has gone up. We know that, and it includes health insurance. It includes, supplies. Everything. The cost of everything has gone up, and you see that playing out in municipal budgets right now. As governor, I have provided more funding for public education than ever before, fully funding the Student Opportunity Act. I've also increased funding for local aid, money that goes direct to cities and towns. I also understand that right now the math isn't working in places. It's really tough. So we do need to look at some of these funding formulas that have been set by statute, how cities and towns get funded per pupil. And I support that look right now, and the legislature is commissioned on that. We're going to be part of that and doing that work, because it's also an issue, I know, particularly in some of our rural communities across the state. They're dealing with declining enrollments, and budgets are really hard. So, Diane, I'm committed, as is Kim Driscoll, to this issue. It's a hard issue, and I know the importance of funding public education. Both my parents worked in public schools. I'm the product of public schools, and that's been part of what's made Massachusetts #1 in education across the country. We are again, because of our commitment to public education. But I fully understand what Diane is saying about how communities are strapped right now for funding.
Diane, I asked you this a couple of months ago, Governor. The Mayor Wu was here and said it was time to consider repeal of Prop 2.5. But as cities and towns say things like Diane is saying, is that the cost of everything from health care, well, you know it much better than I, all these things are exceeding 2.5. You said, I believe you said when I asked you that question, I'll consider anything. Is that not something you should be leading on? Hasn't Prop 2.5 outlived its usefulness?
No, I'm not going to be leading on repeal. I don't support repeal. I think it should be done community by community. I mean, my community, Arlington, we got to vote tomorrow on that.
I mean, overrides.
Yeah.
But, but as Diane said,
and that's what we're
they've had 2
seeing. We're
attempts
seeing
and
record
failed.
number of overrides around the state because of the budget issues that I'm speaking to, right? And so, we'll see what communities do, but it does speak to the pain out there right now.
I was going to do this had Diane's question not been hanging in the balance. I just want to mention, and you have a relationship to this. You'll know why I brought it up. We wanted to congratulate Alex Green, who was on our show a few weeks ago from Harvard. His book, A Perfect Turmoil, Walter E. Fernald and the Struggle to Care for America's Disabled, just won the National Book Circle's Critics Circle Award for Biography last
really?
night. And the reason I
cool.
bring it up is because the issue that he's lobbied on forever and with a lot of people was making available to the family members or academic research the records of people who had been in state hospitals. There was a wonderful man, David Scott, who asked you a question about his brother who died in a facility maybe a year or so ago. You responded, said you would make it happen. You did. I'm bringing it up for two reasons. One, because Alex deserves congratulations for this huge award. But secondly, he communicated to us this morning, I'm not going to spend the time now, that while it's wonderful that the law happened, implementation on something this important has been sketchy at best. So what we'd like to do, with your permission, is forward his issues to your office, and maybe when you're back next month, we'll have that conversation.
No, as I said last year, this is something that, once it was brought to my attention, I wanted to make these files available to families, and I did just that. So certainly want to talk to Alex more about any
Great. We'll
issues.
forward all of his questions. Governor's here at 877-301-8970.
Aaron in Hopkinton, thank you
Hello,
for
Aaron.
calling.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. Yes, Governor, I wanted to thank you for your proposed new hunting legislation update. I'm somebody who started hunting in my mid-30s through your through the state's Mass Wildlife Learn to Hunt program, and it was a game changer, changed my life for a positive. And as I see the pushback or some of the negative reaction to these proposed laws, I hear a lot of fear about Sunday hunting and a lot of lack of understanding about the real safety risk, what's actually borne out. But also a lack of understanding about what lands are open for safety or open to hunting and what aren't. I feel like people don't realize there's thousands of acres of public and land, local, state, federal, that's closed to hunting. And I'm just wondering if there's going to be like a public outreach or a public education program around this proposed legislation, because I do think it will create access and opportunity for people to have really deep connections with nature that I have, particularly marginalized people in urban areas who face restrictions around firearms licensing or, lack of access close by, the setbacks. If New Jersey, the most densely populated state in the union, can do this with 20,000 more hunters, New Jersey, not to throw shade, I feel like we can get this done. What do
Alex,
you think?
Aaron, thank you. Could you explain, by the way, we're getting tons of texts on this, so I'm glad, Aaron. Could you explain what you did before you respond, Aaron?
Sure. Thanks for the call, Aaron. So Massachusetts, it turns out, is one of only 2 states in the country that bans Sunday hunting, and that is something that stems from our blue laws. And there's that as an issue that was brought to my attention. Also brought to my attention, though, and I think we know, the prevalence of tick-borne diseases is really out of control in Massachusetts and in different regions, and that's a public health matter. We've also got issues with food insecurity and people needing to feed their families, and people hunt to feed their families as well. So what I said to the team is, let's go out and do listening sessions. Let's hear from people about making some changes here and what we should do. We had over a dozen listening sessions from all over the state, and what came out of it is what I think should happen. We should allow people to hunt on Sundays. We should change some of the rules around setbacks and the like that are about increasing access to land and space to hunt. And I think this is really good. I think it's really good for a bunch of reasons. Number one, the caller talked about a training program he went through our state agency, Mass Wildlife. Mass Wildlife is responsible for the stewardship of wildlife and the management of wildlife here in the state. They do a fantastic job. And part of what they offer are classes on hunting. And there's wonderful instruction on hunting and ways to hunt. There are also new technologies that make hunting, things like crossbows are actually more accurate in terms of technology out there. So, that's one thing is increasing access to the outdoors, allowing people to hunt. The fact of the matter is, for a lot of working people, if you ban Sunday hunting, which they're banned from now, they're not going to be able to go out and hunt. Maybe Saturdays they're working, or they're like taking their kids to some sport or doing something. It just doesn't meet with the modern day. The other thing is, these hunters, people got to understand, they are feeding families in Massachusetts. There's an organization in the South Coast, southeastern Mass, that feeds, hunters are feeding 100,000 families in Massachusetts with the venison they're able to get. That's a good thing in a time of food insecurity and escalating prices. And the other thing is the public health matter. And that's why when I announced this, I did so with my public health commissioner standing next to me to talk about this as important to addressing the prevalence of ticks and also our need to get after and identify how we can, as Massachusetts, reduce tick-borne diseases, working with life sciences and researchers and companies here. So, that was the motivation behind it. And again, just to level set, Massachusetts is one of only 2 states in the country that ban Sunday hunting. And, in other states, people are able to recreate and walk in the woods and do things. This is a highly regulated space, always has been, and I know that it can continue on Sundays safely as it does Monday through Saturday.
Do you hunt?
Do I hunt?
Yeah.
No, I don't hunt, but I did grow up. I grew up in New Hampshire, and I grew up with hunters. I grew up surrounded by families who hunt, and I respect that tradition, and I respect the need for people to go out, and hunt and load their freezers with meat through the winter. I mean that's a fact of life and a reality. And I did the event too with Jeff Corwin, who is from the South Shore, and I mean just a nature lover, animal lover. You probably see his shows on TV, and it was hunting is also a really important part of managing our wildlife, and that's something that we take seriously here in Massachusetts. In fact, it's because of the great work of Mass Wildlife that we've seen a resurgence of bald eagles in Massachusetts. We've never had certain species. We have a really robust species population. I'm not going to get all the terms right, but like there are a lot of animals that were endangered or at risk of extinction that have now come back in Massachusetts because of the excellent wildlife management. And this, to me, is another example of that.
She's a wildlife expert.
Do you hunt?
So if
I
you
know.
need help,
I
you
know.
can just
I
give
know a
her
lot about
buzz late at
raccoons,
night.
coyotes.
Yeah.
I'm always on the lookout.
Our number is 87.
Governor,
Wild turkeys used to be.
Wild turkeys.
They were extinct almost, and now I remember years ago I was living in Brookline, and they were standing outside Dunkin' Donuts, a whole
I
group
wish
of
they
them.
were
So
extinct. Let me
they
tell
were
you.
chasing people down the
I know,
street
I know.
outside that Dunkin' Donuts, right down
Okay.
Beacon Street. It was really wild.
Martha and Holyoke, you're on with the governor. Hello, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Sure.
Hi, Martha.
I actually live in Springfield and work with families all throughout Hampden County. I am currently doing counseling and went back to school. And there are 2 issues when you were campaigning for governor that I remember dearly, that were your commitment to mental health and your commitment to expanding childcare throughout the state. So my questions today are about those 2 topics. One about what the status. I remember that you said that you wanted to expand the eligibility criteria for the vouchers, make sure that those things were included for childcare for families to be able to go back to work when they had a little one. That's something I see a lot every day. So what's the status of your initiatives? What have been the barriers? And how do you see us moving forward? And then the other question, which is related to mental health, one thing that I celebrated a lot back in 2024 out of your administration was the Physicians Pathway Act to help highly qualified doctors trained abroad to stay here, to provide pathways for them to grow as professionals within the state and continue providing services to our community, especially to the underserved ones. And one thing that I've been passionate about is doing the same thing for mental health practitioners who have been trained abroad, and their credentialing processes is so different than not just Massachusetts, but the states in general. So is that something that your administration is also willing to support in creating a pathway for foreign trained mental health practitioners?
Absolutely.
Martha, thank you for your
Absolutely.
call. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you mentioned a bunch of things there. Look, I think we all know we need more mental health providers here and all over the country. I mean, period. We need more primary care providers here and all over the country. And so, we've tried to incent that by making licensing, reciprocity, something that works better so that people from other places and other countries can come and practice in Massachusetts and deliver high quality health care. And I think we should be doing that for primary care, and we should be doing that for mental health. And that's part of what that program that I started, the Pathways program, bring more people in to help, including in underserved communities. And mental health generally is where we've tried to put more resources. We opened up community behavioral health centers where instead of somebody a young person, going to an emergency room and maybe, spending hours, days sometimes in an emergency room with a mental health issue, being, quote, boarded, the stories about that, they're able to go to a community behavioral health center instead where they have clinicians and they have a much more home-like setting, actually, and that's actually helped families as a respite measure, as a stopgap measure, as a way to intervene right then and there to help this person and then to get them back home safely. So, it's just an example of the kinds of funding that we put forward for mental health. I'm going to continue to focus on that. Childcare, childcare is just like, it's foundational. It's foundational to our economy. I mean, if we want people to be able to go to work, we need their little ones to get childcare. And I'm proud. I'm the only governor, we're the only state to continue COVID-era levels of childcare funding after all that ARPA money went away. But I think it was really important. We've increased childcare seats by 25,000 over the last 3 years on top of what we've had to provide funding for families and for workers so that we can keep childcare centers open and increase the number of spots for childcare. That means, those little kids are cared for and that their parents are able to go to work. So I'm going to continue to fund childcare. We're expanding pre-K. I'm going to beat schedule, ahead of schedule. I said I'd do it in all gateway cities by the end of this year. We're actually going to beat that. But we need to continue to fund childcare and to look for ways to just make it more available. As I talk to young people who work here in the city of Boston with young families, the things that they're really looking at, the cost of housing, cost of childcare. We got to get it down. We got to get it down, and we got to make it more available. The other thing that we're doing, I've funded a program for childcare during, quote, non-traditional hours. We've got a lot of people working in construction, in the trades, mothers, women, who need to be able to get their kids to childcare at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And I'm proud that we've done that. We've got to continue to find childcare for a range of people working.
Governor, the federal prosecutors have launched this new team to go after benefit fraud as well as voter fraud in the state. I think we've all read about people stealing from SNAP or Social Security, but I've not heard of a lot of voter fraud in Massachusetts. Is there something that we should know about here that you're aware of?
Yeah, there's a reason you haven't heard of it, because it doesn't happen. Okay, this is all part of the Donald Trump, come on, right? I mean, just this week, I get another message from HHS and RFK. They're coming after us because we have providers here who are providing abortion and, health care to women, including in other states. I'm proud of that. I'm proud that Massachusetts is going to continue to protect women's access to needed health care. I'm proud that Massachusetts is going to continue to provide ways to deliver people health care. I'm proud that Massachusetts, we actually care about feeding poor people, okay? Now, I also know, I was Attorney General, I used to prosecute fraud, okay? I had a whole office that prosecuted Medicaid fraud. We used to work, and I also, right now as governor, have program integrity units across all of my agencies, in Mass Health, Medicaid, in DTA, which administers, food stamps and benefits. And you know what happens? When those instances, questions of fraud come up, are identified, and the system works as it does here, we make those referrals to the Attorney General's office, to the U.S. Attorney's office, and they're handled. They're investigated and handled. So, that is, as somebody who every day is looking to maximize taxpayer dollars, protect taxpayer dollars, and making sure that taxpayer dollars are not misspent, that are well spent, we do that work. So, I'm always for prosecuting and stopping fraud. Come on. That's been my career. But, you got to understand the the environment and what's going on here across the country and the ways in which the Trump administration, whether it's directly through DOJ or through local U.S. attorneys' offices, are just trying to weaponize in an effort to distract and create issues and target political opponents or continue to push a certain agenda. That's what's happening.
Do you worry about, we asked this question, I think of, I don't know who we asked this, do you worry about this country, this surviving 2 and almost 3 more years of Donald Trump? I mean that literally.
I think it's really important that you have strong state leadership. You know, I work really hard to elect governors, AGs, and secretaries of state across this country who believe in the rule of law, who believe in democracy, who understand, you know, how this country has functioned and is supposed to function. And of course I worry. I worry about this fall. I mean, you know, people have got to, I think, understand what we're going to see over the next several months.
You mean cheating?
Before this election. We're going to see federal agents on the streets, and they're going to be, you know, outside polling places and around, it just as an effort to scare people away. I mean, that's what's happened. There's been an attempt to normalize, whether it's National Guard or ICE. You know, look at our airports now. The presence of federal agents in military-type operations. We can't let that be normal. It's not normal, okay? But, you know, they're doing that for November so that they can scare people and demotivate people from going to the polls. And we've got to fight that, and we've got to fight through that and mobilize people. We also are going to see, look at Fulton County. You know, they ran in and they seized ballots and voting machines. We have a rogue sheriff out in California who apparently is running for governor, who went in and just seized ballots from 2020. Like, are you kidding me? So we're going to see all this, and it's going to be it's going to be perpetuated by the federal government. He's going to weaponize every aspect of the federal government to try to steal this election. That's what's going to happen. And I predict we're going to see some violence before the election, just to give him an excuse to exercise emergency powers. So, you know, we can beat it, we can confront it, we can maintain safe and secure elections as we have here in Massachusetts and across this country. And also people need to be aware of what's happening so that when it happens, you can call it out and you can see it. And also just want to underscore the need to make sure that people are mobilized, that they're not afraid to go out. Also, that young people get out to vote, because unfortunately, you've got a lot of young people right now who are not interested in voting, who don't believe that there is a government there to serve them. And it's really, really important that we talk to our kids and that we talk to our grandkids and that we talk to everybody that we know to say to them, like, your vote matters. It matters right now. And we need people to get out and vote.
You know,
I don't know, that doesn't answer your question.
No,
but yes,
it
I
does.
am. I am concerned, and that's, you know, work we've got to do every day. My job as governor right now is to move Massachusetts forward. You know, meet people where they are, address issues of affordability, build more homes, create more jobs, lower energy costs, lower healthcare costs. Right? Get after issues of mental health that our young people are dealing with. Right? This is the job that I have, and it's also, you know, you need somebody in the corner office who's prepared to stand up over the next 2 years of further abuses by Trump, because, you know, November comes, he's still going to be in office for another 2 years. And that's why leadership from the states really matters, and that's why strong governors who are prepared to meet that really, really matter. What you don't need is somebody who's going to rubber stamp the Trump administration. You don't need it in Massachusetts, you don't need it anywhere across this country, and you need people who understand in that office what we're really up against and what we need to fight for and protect and defend.
Do you think the 3 men who hope for the Republican nomination to challenge you are all Trumpified in your estimation? We don't need, as you just said, we don't need people who are in the Trump camp. Are they, in your estimation?
Yeah, none of them have stood up to Trump, and they've aligned with Trump, and they've supported Trump.
Speaking
but,
of
you know, we'll deal with that come election
well,
time.
one thing you have to deal with, you talk about helping other Democrats get elected. As you know, Elizabeth Warren the other day endorsed Graham Plattner in the Democratic primary in Maine, a critical race for the Democrats against the incumbent Susan Collins. Warren endorsed Plattner over the sitting governor who's trying to get the Democratic nomination, Janet Mills. Have you endorsed in that race?
Janet Mills.
You have.
I served with Janet Mills. She's a great attorney general. She's a great governor. She'd be a great senator of the great state of Maine.
She's getting crushed in the polls. You know that.
Polls are polls. She's doing the work, and they've got a primary in June.
Let's go to
Elaine in Norfolk. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Elaine.
Hi, Governor Healey. Thanks so much for taking my call.
Hi, Elaine.
I'm getting feedback. Is that from me?
Our apologies. It's unfixable, but we hear you perfectly, Elaine. Thanks for the call.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Governor Healey, right now I'm working with a lot of parents with people with disabilities. I know that you're aware that next month is Autism Awareness Month. My question for you is, as you know, there used to be 6 intermediate care facilities in the state of Massachusetts. Currently, there's only 2 remaining. One is in Rentham, the Rentham Developmental Center. The second is the Hogan Regional Center in Danvers. My question for you is, these facilities are state-run, federally regulated, and Medicaid certified. They provide specialized services for people with profound disabilities, especially autism, including 24/7 medical care and structured educational, vocational, and recreational programming. My question for you is, will you help us keep those facilities open? Especially Rentham is 400 acres of land. It is crucial for our people. Our people need to have the right to, me as my son's guardian, he's nonverbal autistic. I need to have be able to make a decision if I want him to be in a institutional or intermediate care facility or in a group home.
Elaine, let's have the governor respond because we're very short on time, and I want to make sure she has time to respond to you.
Yeah, Elaine, I understand what you and families like yours are going through. And rest assured, there are no plans to close any facilities. We want to make sure that within facilities, people are getting access to the very best in terms of care. But, you know, a week or 2 ago, I issued an executive order that you should check out. It's an executive order on autism and focusing on profound autism and the need in this state to look at all the options that we have for families, particularly as their children age out and become over 22. What do? You know, and like I would like to see built across the state. This is what I have a team, and it's including families like yours, looking at what are the options, what are the best living scenarios for their loved ones, and you know whether it's in group home settings or small communal living settings or something else. Let's figure out what is the best model that serves Massachusetts families well. No other state is doing this, by the way, but I know how many families here are families like yours. And as governor, I'm committed to working with you all and figuring out how Massachusetts can innovate and build a way forward that really meets the needs of our families here. And I welcome your input and the input of others on that. And I just encourage, you know, as we think about Autism Month here in April, I encourage people, if you haven't seen my executive order, please see it and reach out to us if you want to be involved.
Elaine, thank you. Before you go, only have a minute left. You're at the No Kings rally tomorrow. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, I encourage people to get out. You know, attendance has only grown through all of these rallies. I think this is the 4th big one. The 4th, I think, the latest, and I think we'll see bigger crowds than ever. It's really important. It's really important because, you know, part of what authoritarians try to do is just deaden us and depress us and weaken us and normalize a bunch of stuff that is just really wrong. And I think it's important that people are out, you know, and showing that, yeah, there's a whole lot of us that understand this is not right. There's solidarity. There's community. Building community now is really important. I also, you know, encourage you to share on your social media with others what you're seeing and how you're feeling, because you know that also helps build community. And you know, this is really important work that we've got to do and continue to do, and we've got to get people to get out and vote in November.